Hi, my name is Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants. And today we have the honor and the privilege of meeting Lisa Smith, who's a licensed arborist and tree lover and very well known throughout the Los Angeles County. And we're so lucky to have her and her expertise in plant and specifically tree care. Lisa.
Thanks, Charles.
You're very
so
welcome.
Sweet. Well, today we're going to talk about extremes, extreme weather, wind, heat, and how to protect your tree during those extreme events. And I've spent the last 24 years in Southern California inspecting trees, observing trees, and seeing what makes trees tick and how to maintain them with the best management practices. So thank you again, Charles, for having me here today. I'm really excited. You have a fun group, and I know we're going to cover some great stuff.
You're very welcome, Lisa. And if anybody wants to reach out to Lisa, I'm going to put in the comments below all of her contact information so you can reach out to her with any of your tree questions as well. Thanks again for watching.
Bye.
And my gift to you guys when it comes to plants, I always try to make sure you guys leave with something. My daughter Isabel, who's now 7, and I prepared all of these.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
All of these plants. So we got these lantanas, which are excellent attractors of butterfly. We got these vinca, which grow very easily in the summer. So we got lantana, vinca. I've also got, for those of you that haven't started your tomato plants, and even if you've already started them, I've got some tomatoes in here, which are the Sweet 100 variety. I got some red bell peppers in here, as well as the black beauty eggplants, which are the large, eggplant variety. So all of those are in here, and all of them have been sprayed with as well. This product as well, which is Ivory Organics. It's a 3-in-1 plant guard, and it protects your plants from sun stress. So you notice sometimes when you install your plants in the ground, they'll begin to wilt a little bit, and some of them will even dry out from the sun and the heat stress. This here basically functions as a sun block, keeping your plants several degrees cooler, and especially when you're battling high temperatures like what we're going into in the summer. So this will help with all transplants as well as your more sensitive plants, such as, welcome Lisa. I know, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. So in about 5 to 10 minutes before it's over. So this here is the Ivory Organics. You'll notice on the leaves, you'll notice that some of them have a very light spray on it, and that's basically Ivory Organics helping your plants stay several degrees cooler, so once you install them in your ground, it'll still have that protection on your plant. So,
is that for bugs too, or just for sun?
Great question. So Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard. It does 3 things. It basically reflects the sun in the summer to prevent sunburn. In the winter, it guards your plants if it's coated on, brushed on. It protects against sun scald. The second defense is pest control. It's got 7 oils in there, which include castor, cinnamon, clove. I gotta read this. I should have this memorized. Garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint oil. So all of these oils are in there and infused with the solution to then offer a time-release defense against insects as well. And it's the castor and the clove oil that are in there that naturally repel rodents from girdling your trees too. So if you've ever noticed the base of your tree getting girdled, by coating it with the Ivory Organics, it also repel girdling as well. And the product was kind of developed off of replacing what 90% of farmers and growers do, which is using latex white paint. So they go to the paint department, they're using something that's carcinogenic, and it's got all these preservatives in the wood, which when you paint your house, it's supposed to last for decades, if not a century or longer. So when you paint it, you're basically dealing with something that's got a lot of preservatives, algicides, fungicides, and these preservatives, they have a long shelf life and potentially contaminate your soil, the environment, so on and so forth. So this is an organic alternative to using latex white paint to accomplish the same concept that was used hundreds, if not thousands of years, a phenomenon known as whitewashing. So,
What's the name of it?
Ivory Organic, or 4 Organic as some people call it, and it's at HomeDepot.com, Sears.com, Walmart.com, Amazon.com. There's about a dozen places you'll find it online. It basically comes in a can as well as in a ready-to-use.
So can you go to the store and get it beside online?
Later this year. Yeah.
Home Depot. No.
So with our presentation today, I made this super simple. I'm so glad Lisa Smith is already here so I can wrap up a lot faster. But all of you should have now this garden class questions list with like 100 questions on here. And the way I'm going to do this is there's a lot of familiar faces here that hopefully you guys have picked up something in my last 3, 4, or 5 years that I've been doing this. So most of these questions were things that we've already discussed before, and if not, hopefully this will just be another reinforcement. I thought this would be a more fun way than me just lecturing. So I've got a list here of all the names of everybody that's here. So if you have the answer, raise your hand and I will put you down as first, and that means you'll be the first one to help yourself to some plants. And there will be leftovers, so whatever's left over, you'll be taking more plants with you as well. But I'm hoping to gain your participation. So, first question. Name 3 above ground beneficial insects. Show of hand, Caroline. Ladybugs. Anybody else? Praying mantis. And another?
No, she took mine.
Butterflies?
Butterflies, beneficial insects for the sake of pollinating, because they can pollinate your plants too. The answer is yes. The other ones that came up, so I just basically wrote the first 3. So the other ones that came up were ants. Ants are considered beneficial. What are they doing? They're breaking down organisms within your property. Bees, obviously, the bees for the pollinating. The hummingbirds also for pollinating. What else is there? Is there more? You're almost, well, once we get to the next one, then we'll switch back over to the beneficial. We can do it. Spider's another beneficial one. That was one of my top 3.
Worms?
And worms when we get to the second question. So
I'm so smart.
So when it comes to the beneficial insects, I'm gonna state this from now. Your pests, which include like your aphids, are also beneficial as well. Even though they're on your roses or other plants sucking the juices out of it, they're also beneficial in the sense that they're the food for the praying mantis, for the ladybug, for the hummingbird as well. Most people think they only eat nectar, but they don't. They also catch a lot of those gnats that are flying in the air. So there's, even your pests are beneficial. So when you're treating your plants for pest control, make sure you see that in fact your plant is truly stressed and in need of your support for pest control. The second one I've got on the list is name 3 below ground beneficial insects, and Rosemary already said worms. So that one is a definite. Who said nematodes?
Me.
So Sue.
Yep.
And then any other ones, Bob?
Gophers.
Both gophers beneficial. So
They aerate the soil.
I thought he said
I hate gophers, and I almost lost a tree about 2 months ago to gophers. But if you do any research on like this St. Helena, I believe, the volcano that erupted whatever number of years ago, they attribute the success and the revival of all the plants and the trees and everything good that ever happened to that mountain following the volcano to the gophers. One, in the sense that they aerate the soil. 2, they store seeds under the ground that bring life back into the soil faster. They do have their value. Another value that gophers add is also aeration, as Bob mentioned. The oak trees that I visited when I was up in Northern California, there's gophers all over the place, and the trees are thriving so beautifully well. There's a balance between what the gophers are doing and the trees reaping a benefit off of those trees as well. So yeah, gophers can be beneficial as well. Is there another one anybody else wants to share?
Did you want organisms or animals?
Organisms, that's why I left it as organisms.
Okay.
So I'll share a couple more. Mycorrhizal fungus. When you take a look at some of your organic fertilizers, which I'm going to talk about in a second, some of them say mycorrhizal fungi being added to it. And the value of what the fungus, which should already be there in your property, you don't need these added fertilizers to accomplish this. But with these mycorrhizal, just fungi in general, what they do is they run these rhizomes, the roots, that can run not 5 feet or 10 feet, but they can travel 1,000 feet, and they can network water and minerals and all the good things that are life-giving in the soil to the trees and share that value from tree to tree to tree to tree. The best example I learned a couple years ago was in Alaska when the bears pull out all of the salmon out of the rivers, and they're all at the base of the river, all these carcasses. Sometimes they get so full they just eat the eyeballs and the brains, and they leave the flesh behind. And now there's just mountains of dead fish all along the coast. But how do the trees at the very top of the hill benefit? And the only way these things are pulled up the hillside are the fungi. The fungi are living under the ground. they reap a benefit from the trees taking the sugars that the tree shares with the fungi that's living under the ground. So they don't need to live above the ground like these plants that are reaping their benefit through the process of photosynthesis, but rather they're gaining the benefit of the sugars under the ground. In exchange, they're giving water and minerals to the highest peaks where the fish are down at the riverbed, and the trees even at the top of the hillside are still benefiting. Same thing with the oak trees that we see around here. They're like, how are these things thriving? How are they getting water? How are they getting minerals? It's these fungi that are traveling and bringing all these resources up to the tree. So keep in mind the value of fungus in the garden. Another important one, nematodes was mentioned, which are like very small microscopic worms that are breaking down the organic materials. And that leads me to the next one. We're going to talk about fertilizers in just a second. Another one that's in regards to good or bad is, I don't know how many of you have seen, once you play in your garden, you see grubs in your soil. Do you know what the grubs are or what they're going to turn into? Any ideas? Anybody? No. They're going to turn into something that's going to fly around on your property. Do you know what those grubs are? Those Japanese beetles that, I don't know about going, but you know what I'm talking about, the fluorescent green, the fluorescent blue beetles. And so when you see those grubs in your soil, those are Japanese beetles. So what they do when they're in the ground is they're feeding on a lot of your younger, tender roots, and they're, more so affecting the plant life, more so than eating insects within the soil. So that's the reason there's a lot of grub control, damaging lawns as well. But those are ultimately going to turn into those flying beetles, those Japanese beetles. So again, the name alone tells you that they're an invasive species, or I'm assuming Japanese beetle from Japan. I haven't done my research on that, but the point is that's an invasive species. So when you talk about Jerusalem bug, and I'm thinking, now we're talking about another part of the world, they probably don't belong here, and we got to find a way to, deal with it and manage it. And when it comes to good or bad, we're supposed to look at it in a way where all the good things and bad things are all good, and try to balance them. But when it's an invasive species, which I'm hoping Lisa Smith gets into discussions about these invasive beetles that are destined to destroy like 80% of our trees in the western United States, and these bark beetles, are one of them. We just got to learn how to manage it and grow things that are maybe more compatible or more resistant. So we'll get to that. I'm going to try to go a little faster because I really want to give the floor to Lisa. 6 macronutrients plants need. All of us usually hear about 3, but I'll repeat these with you in just a minute. 6 macronutrients, which are the nutrients plants need the most. Anybody?
Potassium, nitrogen.
Nitrogen, Elizabeth.
Potassium is neat.
Phosphorus, Bob.
Yeah.
And one more?
Nitrogen.
No?
Magnesium?
Magnesium is a macronutrient as well. Good. Anybody else? Hands? So I'll just state it real quick. When you take a look at your fertilizers, here's a really fast, easy one. Big giant, what are the numbers? Can you see in the back? So a lot of 8s, 3 8s. The 8s on there just simply mean 8% nitrogen, so your first number is always the nitrogen. Your second number is your phosphorus, which controls the flowers and fruit support, another 8%. It's not just 8, whatever, it's 8% of the product has phosphorus in it. And the last one is 8% potassium, which is typically for root development and disease resistance. So those are usually the numbers you're looking at. But there's one other macronutrient plants need the most of, which is the second most important nutrient that's not even on this list. And it should be like the second number on here. It's the second most important macronutrient. What is it?
Nitrogen.
Eggs, lamb. Eggs? Calcium. So saving your eggshells and bringing that calcium into your garden, calcium is a very important macronutrient, a nutrient plants need a lot of. And when I bring eggshells into my property, I do as much as I can in the spring, and again as much as I can in the summer. Take a break, come fall, because the plants are now entering dormancy. And again, in the winter, no need to do anything because your plants are now dormant. Even if they're green, their metabolism is so slow it's not worth doing anything. So we just talked about nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the 3 that you're looking for when you go to the nursery, and magnesium. So those are the other 3 to make the 6 macronutrients. Your micronutrients, I'm just going to read these real quick, are boron, chlorine, manganese, not magnesium, but manganese is a micronutrient, iron, zinc, copper, molybdenum, nickel, and cobalt. So all of these micronutrients, which are what plants need in very little percentages and can be applied as a foliar spray sometimes to get those nutrients into the plant. That's when you hear about foliar feeding and the values to get these micronutrients into the plants. So when it comes to plant health, and I wrote at the very bottom, I've done everything right for my plant, yet my tree is dying. Any suggestions? I don't know if, I'm sure all of us have examples, and it happened in my property just a couple weeks ago. I told you with the, wasn't a gopher, but in fact a mole that tunneled all around the base of my house avocado, and all of a sudden it went from supporting 20 avocados to avocados falling, leaves drooping. A lot of this year's new leaves that came out in the spring started falling as well, and I'm like, oh no, what do I do? And the first thing I did once I watered it, I put my hand near the base, and the soil was just collapsing all around the root zone because of all the tunnels that were created by this critter. So it was diverting water. Whenever I was watering the plant, it was diverting the nutrients, and the plant was starving and drying out. So we corrected the issue. We pruned half the branches back to alleviate any of the stress, done to the roots, and we're just crossing our fingers now. It's week 2 and trying to get it back. My list in regards to looking for signs and how to correct them is, one, you've got to look at the watering, and with all of these things, there's also a too much factor and a too little factor.
Yeah.
When it comes to watering, you want to water your trees, and this is just generally, you want to water your trees and soak them. You want to soak them to the point that the entire root zone is wet. For the larger trees, this could require watering that exceeds 30 minutes to an hour. At least it will cover more so depending on how to accomplish that. But you need to water that entire root zone. So as big as the tree is above, you got to think about that whole circumference around where those branches are, and as deep as you can. You soak that area, and once you do so, then you take a break and you wait till the soil dries, but now, again, not bone dry. You don't want the plant to stress. So there's a balance of watering that needs to be accomplished, and this is just in general for plants. Some are more water loving and some are more, drought loving as well. Fertilizers, and that's why I brought these fertilizers over here to my right. The type of fertilizer you use can affect the number of pests, and these are the pests that you don't want on your property. We talked about aphids being, a pest we don't want, but these pests can be out of control if you're using chemical fertilizers that force too much nitrogen into your plant, creating artificial growth that the plant can't now support, and now you've got a plant that just can't manage its health because you've done things chemically. I brought over here a series of products, and I'm going to pass them around, but I want you guys to get knowledgeable in reading the ingredients of fertilizers. When you take a look at, for example, here's Miracle-Gro, and it reads, derived from. All of your fertilizers will read derived from, and it says here ammonium sulfate, potassium phosphate, potassium chloride, urea phosphate, boric acid, copper sulfate, manganese, EDTA. Does that sound organic or does it sound chemical so far? Pretty clear, right? So I'm going to share this around so you can kind of see like what to look for when you see it. But here's another, I'm not making fun of Miracle-Gro because Miracle-Gro also makes organics too. So when you pick up another Miracle-Gro package, you're going to turn it around, it's going to say derived from porcine bone meal. What's porcine, any guess? Yeah. So this is made from the bones of pigs, and what the benefit is on this one, if you take a look right above where the star is on the back of the label, it says 688, which means 680. So a lot of nitrogen, phosphorus, and no potassium. So it's not a balanced fertilizer, but if your goal is just to accomplish, some nutrients, but you're going to mix it with something else to get a lot more potassium in the soil, you can work towards accomplishing those percentages. But this is not a balanced fertilizer, not necessarily something I'd recommend unless you mix it with something else. So here's another example of organics. Here's another one with organics, and again, I don't need to keep reading it, but I'll read this one here because it's the organic derived. Feathers, bones, poultry manure, sulfate of potash. So again, you read the ingredients derived from, and you hear all these organic parts, and this is an organic alternative. So I'll just quickly tell you, this one here, Osmocote, when you see it, chemical. Fish and kelp fertilizer, organic. And then this one over here, another organic one as well. So I'll pass these around so you can see them.
Yeah, I've got
Now the last thing in conclusion, why do things organically versus chemically? We had a guest speaker at our spring gardening class that said it makes no difference. It doesn't affect yield, it doesn't affect growth, it doesn't affect all these things. But you're doing things organically, one, because you want your whole foods produce in your backyard. You're picking things that are fresh and you know what they're derived from, compared to a chemical source. For example, we know that, like that Miracle Grow, the first label we saw, being derived from chemicals, that nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium is going into your fruits and vegetables and you're eating it. If that matters to you, you're getting your food derived from a chemical source versus an organic source. Two, when you're growing things organically, you're feeding the soil biology, and that's why we talked about when it comes to pests and beneficial insects, that you kind of want all of them. They're all working together to help turn those organics into the elements necessary for a healthy plant and tree success. So that's kind of my lesson on fertilizers. And if I could, yes.
Charles, all of these ingredients.
So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, and most importantly, by subscribing below, you'll be connected to this and all the other educational gardening videos. Thanks again for watching, and happy gardening.